Hi, I'm Joshua Farnsworth, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to SawStop's new folding out feed table, and I'm also going to show you a tutorial on how to set it all up. Having an outfeed table is a really useful accessory for a table saw because it extends the support that you get when you're ripping a board or whether you're cross-cutting with a sled, and it makes it a lot more safe. I used to have a nice big wooden outfeed table that in my previous shop. It was a shop that I didn't need everything to be mobile like I do here in the school. So I hadn't gotten around to building a folding out feed table here, and then SawStop was nice enough to send me one. In the meantime, the past few years I've just been using kind of little roller stands, which they're okay, but they don't really give you a lot of support and they're kind of finicky. The great thing about this outfeed table is that it's specifically made for the SawStop cabinet saw and industrial saw, and maybe another couple models. You'll need to check before you buy it just to make sure it's compatible with your table saw. But the nice thing is the legs just simply fold up, and when I have classes going on and I need the workbenches back further here, I can just fold this outfeed table down and get it all the way out of the way. And then when classes are not in session, all I have to do is push the workbenches out of the way, and I can fold these legs down and fold the outfeed table back out, and I'm ready to go again. This SawStop outfeed table is really nice because it's very sturdy and solid, being made out of metal. It does require a little bit of work looking through the instruction manual, and I'm not a big fan of reading through instruction manuals, but I figured most of you are not either, so I decided to make this video so that you could kind of avoid having to spend so much time deciphering the instructions. Although I must say, when I assembled my cabinet saw here, SawStop's instruction manual was probably the best I've ever read. So the manual is good and you should refer to it, especially if you have a slightly different model than what I have. I can't remember the exact model of my SawStop table saw, but I'll put it in the notes below the video, along with a link to this outfeed table. But it should be pretty close, and it'll help you even if you have a different model of the SawStop cabinet saw. And it should help you get on your way. And but if there's anything that I've missed or any questions, please leave a comment below. And also make sure you do check your user manual when you do this. So if you don't want to stick around to watch the whole instruction on how to set this up and get it all ready, that's totally fine. Just make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can see a lot of other useful and helpful woodworking videos. And for those of you who are ready to jump in and tackle putting this together, here we go. I hope it's helpful. The outfeed table comes in a pretty small box, which means you've got quite a lot of assembly to do. Here's a look at the unboxing. Fortunately, SawStop labels everything really well. And here's a look at all the parts spread out. The only tools you need are a straight edge or level, and a 10mm and 13mm wrench. A socket wrench is a bit more handy, but not necessary. And the 5mm hex wrench comes in the box. As you can see, my SawStop model has an extension wing to make the saw surface wider. So in my instructions we'll focus on this size of table saw. If your SawStop doesn't have an extension wing, then you'll follow different instructions, which you'll find in the manual. All the bolts, nuts, and washers come in a packet that's really very well labeled, which I'll refer to throughout this assembly. First, lay out 2 table tubes labeled Part A. Make sure that the tubes are lined as shown here, then insert an M6 by 45 socket head cap screw into an M6 by 16 washer. Push the screw through the hole into the table tube and into 2 M6 by 10 washers, a bearing, and finally into an M6 lock nut. Tighten the nut with a 10mm wrench and hex wrench. Then take the large roller, part F, and insert table roller bushings into each end. Now the large roller can slide into the roller bushings. The roller won't be secure, so just set it aside until later. Now we'll attach the insert table, part D, to the two table tubes. With the tubes oriented as shown here, flip the insert table upside down and align it at the opposite ends of the tubes from the roller bushings. Through each of the 6 holes, you can insert an M6 by 40 socket head cap screw and M6 by 16 washer. Once they come through the hole, add another M6 by 16 washer and an M6 lock nut. Tighten all 6 nuts down with your hex wrench and a 10mm wrench. After the table is flipped right side up, use a straight edge to make sure the table sits lower than the table tubes. If it doesn't, then loosen the nuts and lower it before retightening. Now you can set this assembly aside as well. Now grab 4 more table tubes labeled Part A and lay them out on a table. I find it easier to elevate them with a board. Make sure the holes are laid out exactly as shown here, and do exactly the same thing you did in the previous assembly to attach the roller bushings. And as before, you'll insert an M6 by 45 socket head cap screw into an M6 by 16 washer, push the screw through the hole in the table tube, and into 2 M6 by 10 washers, a bearing, and finally into an M6 lock nut. Insert the small table rollers and then set these 2 assemblies aside. Next we'll assemble the clamps that connect the outfeed table to your table saw. This is what the clamps will look like after the assembly. Grab the packet of 4 rear rail clamps, labeled Part K, and all the fasteners from Packet J. Thread the set screws less than halfway into the bottom of each clamp, and if necessary, use the hex wrench. Just make sure the hex end is on the bottom as shown here. Then insert an M6 by 35 socket head cap screw through the hole of the shorter side of a clamp mounting bracket and an M6 by 16 washer. Insert the screw through the upper hole of the clamp, then through another M6 by 16 washer and an M6 lock nut. Tighten the screw into the nut, but leave it loose enough to have a little play. Maybe not as much play as is shown here. Repeat this assembly with the other 2 clamps and make sure each set has clamps that are assembled opposite to each other like this. Now we'll attach 2 of the clamps to the main roller assembly. Flip it on its side and into each large hole put an M6 by 20 socket head cap screw. On the bottom side, push the screw through 3 M6 by 16 washers, through the hole in the top of the clamp, through 4 M6 by 16 washers, and then an M6 lock nut. Make sure the 2 clamps are opposite each other as shown here. Add the tube end caps to the table tubes. Attach the table assembly to the rail on your table saw and center it between the miter slots. If your rail looks different than mine, then refer to your manual for a variation on this step. Tighten the set screws and use your straight edge to make sure that the insert table and tubes are level with or a tad lower than the table surface. If the outfeed table is too high or too low, you'll take the clamps back off and rearrange the stack of washers on the clamp to bring the outfeed table a little lower or a little higher. Grab the other 2 roller assemblies that you put together earlier and attach the remaining 2 clamps in the same manner and with the same size screws, nuts, and bolts. The clamps on the 2 assemblies should look like this. And again, add the tube end caps to these tubes. Now grab the 4 table support tubes, labeled Part B. It's vital that you lay them out exactly like I show here, with the tubes arranged like I have them. On one of the tubes, I count down 6 holes to get the hole for the screw, and I align that hole with the hole number 3 of the other tube. The rear tubes are arranged exactly the same. Then I lay the roller table assembly down so the holes align as shown here. each of the 8 large holes, I insert an M6 by 35 socket head cap screw. I find it easier to insert the screw with the hex wrench and insert all 8 screws first to stabilize the assembly. Then where the screws exit the bottom of the tubes, add an M6 by 16 washer and M6 lock nut. It's important that you don't tighten these nuts yet. We'll tighten the remaining M6 screws at the end. Grab the 2 support legs labeled Part C and support leg hardware pack labeled M. Thread the 2 M8 hex nuts onto the threaded shafts, almost to the bottom of the rubber foot. Then insert the foot into the bottom of each leg support until it reaches the hex nut. Next, lay the 2 support legs under the previous table assembly and line them up as shown here with the front 2 bars. Slip an M8 by 20 washer onto an M8 by 70 button head socket screw, then slide it through the hole in the support leg, then through another M8 by 20 washer, through the table support tube, through another M8 by 20 washer, and finally into an M8 lock nut. Here's a closer look at the other leg. Don't fully tighten these screws yet. Reattach the whole assembly to the table saw rail, allowing the legs to hang down to support the assembly. Align the insert table between the miter slots on the table saw, but only slightly tighten the set screws on the clamps. Then use a 13mm wrench and the hex wrench to tighten the screws and nuts until the legs will move, but not fall down when raised up. Now we'll add the 2 remaining table tubes, Part A. Line the screw holes up exactly as shown here, with the large holes facing upward. Insert M6 by 35 socket head cap screws into the holes and secure it on the bottom with an M6 by 16 washer and M6 lock nut. Do not tighten these screws all the way yet. Attach the other small roller assemblies in the same way with the same hardware. Also, don't tighten these screws all the way. Loosen the clamp set screws and make a final alignment of the outfeed table, making sure to align it with the side of the table saw. Also make sure that the miter slot in the table saw won't be obstructed. Then tighten the set screws on all 4 clamps and all the loose screws on the tubes. After everything's tightened down, add all the remaining tube end caps to the exposed holes. Now we're almost finished. Adjust the rubber feet so that the pads are touching the floor. You can now fold everything up and see how nicely the outfeed table folds out of the way. You can add your fence back on and you're ready to start using your outfeed table. If you're interested in woodworking with a mix of hand tools and power tools, visit my website at woodandshop.com, where you can find a bunch of free woodworking lessons, workshop tours of amazing woodworkers, and our very popular tool buying guides. Make sure you subscribe to my free newsletter and check out my 10 steps for getting started in woodworking. Enjoy!